It's like ethical genius. It sort of undercuts at the same time as not contradicting the truth of the law or the justice. It's this brilliant moment. It's this brilliant moment. Yeah, that does sound pretty pro-Christianity, doesn't it? And look at some of the comments. He is so close to Jesus. Bro's starting to get it. He's so close. Times like 15. Okay, you want to see something funny? Let's look at where that clip was taken from and listen to the very next words out of my mouth. It's this brilliant moment, but unfortunately, it's not in our earliest manuscripts, and so most scholars believe that it's a later interpolation. But unfortunately,
yeah, it is. It does appear to be, at least.
It's not in our earliest manuscripts, and so most scholars believe it's a later interpolation. That is to say that our earliest manuscripts of John's Gospel, the only gospel in which you'll find this story today, don't contain this story.
It's really weird too to me, because Alex reached out to me. We spoke when Wes Huff stuff took place, when me and Neil from Gnostic Informant were going back and forth with Wes Huff, or really just toward Wes Huff, because Wes Huff never he made one reaction to Neil because Neil showed up on the big YouTube channel. Having a hard time thinking right now, but he reacted to Neil. Then Neil did a hit piece with me. We critiqued him. And then Alex got in the fray about this whole word for word thing on Joe Rogan. Alex reached out to me, and there were so many Christians in the chat completely attacking Alex. I mean, like, going crazy, that Alex is like, is this real? Or are these fake bots that are putting these comments there? And I told him, I was like, man, I've never seen this many comments from Christians losing their minds from us being critical of Wes Huff, but I don't know if they're real or not. And so we had a conversation about it. The point is like, Christians have been like sitting here in the chat waiting for Alex to convert. I don't know if this had some starting point with Wes Huff or not.
That at some point it was added in later. It wasn't a part of the original gospel. I mean, look, to make this really clear, let's go back for a moment and look at what Chris actually asked me. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe that was, a later interpolation, because the Quran is the word of God.
What's an interpolation?
Oh, like a later edition. Okay. So something that's added later into the text. So like earlier I mentioned the stoning of the adulterous woman, which is it's one of my favorite stories in the gospel.
You lined it up again.
And that's where the real starts, right? So Chris has asked me, what's an interpolation? I say, well, it's when someone has kind of taken a text and like sneakily added in something later that isn't historical. Then I start explaining this story. That's where the real starts. Then the real ends. Immediately after which, I say, it's this brilliant moment, but unfortunately, it's not in our earliest manuscripts.
You can see why the Christian cut it off where they cut it off. Don't be like that. That's Alex's lesson to all sides. Don't be like that. Christian, atheist, agnostic, don't be like that. Don't be so, brainwashed and stuck in your ways that you can't just allow the guy to say what he wants to say and have conversations.
Most scholars believe that it's a later interpolation. So in this moment on Chris Williamson's podcast, I'm arguing for the unreliability of the gospel narrative, and someone has chopped off the context either side, made it black and white, put some fancy music behind it, and is now trying to pass it off as a kind of pro-Jesus piece of content. I mean, the reason why I'm saying, this is my favorite story in the Gospels, and I think Jesus is so cool here, is to point out that some of my favorite parts about who Jesus is aren't historical. They're not really part of the original gospel.
I think that that's a good observation. Again, I think that more people need to hear what Alex is saying, pay attention, because he's been critical for a long time. I don't know why, other than he's having conversations with people that they don't really care to hear from or to listen to, or that he, in a sense, with the Bear Grylls interview, he catered to that conversation in such a polite manner that a lot of people probably would have felt like, what the heck? And I think it's due to the popularity of Bear Grylls, and he's having a really famous conversation here. That's what I boiled it down to, is if you take any of how Alex is presenting himself, not overly critical with Bear Grylls, but very polite and nice and kind and enjoying it, is that he's talking to a celebrity. Come on. He's not being, Christopher Hitchens enters the room and harsh and the whole time,
narrative. And you know what's really annoying about this? Because these are literally the next words out of my mouth, whoever edited this reel knew what they were doing.
Yes.
Like they fully knew
Yes.
the point that I was trying to make. They had listened through and were like waiting for a moment to pull, and they just knew that I was arguing here that this is not a historical story. And they've just taken it anyway and turned it into some Christian content. And I see these kinds of reels and TikToks like all the time. People keep taking my material and turning it into...
Try to be faithful with what he's saying, right? I mean, if you're going to do it, don't take my words out of context. Apply the context the way that I'm using it, or at least give a better description of what I'm actually trying to imply.
Pro-Christian content. Like, look, here's another example from He Chose You on Instagram. Alex O'Connor admits to be Christian. I'll save you some time. I did not do that. Here's a more recent example from Speak Life. 42,000 likes. Stephen Bartlett is saying that he used to be an atheist, and just look at my face.
Such a staunch atheist. And I read all those books at 18 years old, and I was debating dog walkers on the street. But I now find myself in a position where I'm almost back to being curious again.
Man, it kind of looks like I'm praying or something, except I didn't make those faces in that moment. Those expressions are taken from a different part of the podcast around half an hour later and just like spliced in for some reason. And of course, the clip ends with my recommendation to read the Gospels.
What would you suggest?
If it seemed to me going to church or reading the Gospels might provide that for him, then I'd probably recommend that he did that. But neglect to mention that this is just one option I give, among others, including taking psychedelic drugs.
If he came to you and he was your friend in Dubai, and he said, my life is lacking meaning, I can't get out of bed anymore, what would you prescribe him? What would you recommend? What would you suggest as he's your friend?
It's hard to know without knowing that friend. But if it seemed to me like going to church or reading the Gospels might provide that for him, then I'd probably recommend that.
My God, bro, I feel like I'm actually having deja vu on myself here, because I've said this on my channel several times, that if meaning was provided and helping their life was provided by believing, that they wanted to believe the Gospels, I say what is bettering their life, that philosophy is what they should do. As long as it's not harming other people and that they are going down that path of they're lacking whatever it is and they need it, I don't care. As long as it's not hurting others, go for it. Whatever helps give you personally meaning. Don't push it on people, but apply. If you got to apply that to your own mind to have a good life, go for it. I encourage it. And that seems what Alex seems to be saying here I've not even watched the full interview. I only watched one little part I reacted to already of this interview. And I'll tell you, I really, really, really do think that Alex is being taken out of context. Of course, this is what happens when you become popular. And yeah, I do the same thing. I tell anyone that.
He did that. But I think that literally the subjective feeling of meaning is usually tied up in the identification of something that transcends your individual self.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Why would you?
And I think whatever is the most plausible course of action for that person to engage in something like that would be what I would recommend for them. If maybe they're not particularly interested in religion, I'd recommend that they read some philosophy of mind and try to understand the nature of consciousness. And I might recommend, depending on who they are, that they take a psychedelic drug and try to experience something which cannot be put into words. I wasn't asked where someone should go.
I wonder if Alex has ever done that, because I have several times.
For philosophical truth. I was asked what I would recommend a friend do if they were feeling depressed.
Yeah.
And if I thought that reading the Bible would help my friend to stop being depressed, I'd tell them to read the Bible. If I thought that studying philosophy of mind would do that, I'd tell them to do that, because that's a totally different question to what I think is true. I mean, just type in Alex O'Connor Christianity into TikTok or Instagram or something, and you will just see this endless list of videos which make it seem as though I'm some kind of Christian apologist. By the way, in all of these clips, I've replaced the backing music to something similar, but that's not going to get me a copyright strike. But just imagine like No Surprises by Radiohead, or like some famous Christian piano worship music. That's the stuff that's actually there. Like, it's actually kind of annoying. It would be a bit like if a Christian, say John Lennox or somebody, were to sit for an interview and say, the first thing I want to say is that atheists need to be taken seriously. The problem of evil is a serious challenge, and I can understand why that would make someone doubt the existence of God. And then he goes on to say, but this is my answer. If somebody just like clipped that first bit where he says that the problem of evil is a really good reason not to believe in God, and they like uploaded it onto an atheist Instagram account and made it all black and white and put some dramatic music in the background and tried to like pass it off as if John Lennox was arguing for atheism, I think that that would be, shall we say, a little bit unfair to him and unfair to the people who are watching who now think that John Lennox believes something that he doesn't. And I don't really mind it. It's the internet. You can't stop people from doing things like that. And anybody who's that interested could take 5 minutes to check the source material and realize the context in which I'm speaking, or look at any of my other work and realize that I'm not exactly on...
By the way, I can see Christians taking the clips of him saying that he thinks Christianity is more plausible than when he was younger and making that into a video. But making the point that he's on the verge of becoming one of us.
Bored with Orthodox Christianity. But just bear that in mind, maybe, the next time you see one of these Reels or TikToks. And certainly the next time you see me talking positively about Christianity and saying that it might be more plausible than the new atheists give it credit for, please do not read this as me being on the verge of a conversion. And certainly don't read it as me partaking in some kind of grift. I mean, seriously, think about this for just a moment. Suppose I were trying to, grift. Suppose I were trying to sort of get the Christians on board. I want their money. I want the popularity of Christianity. Do you think it would make any sense if I were trying to grift in this way? That, yeah, sure, I'll say Christianity is more plausible than Richard Dawkins thinks that it is, which is not saying much. But at the same time, I'll say things like, the God that you believe in is acting like a tribal war god. We don't have anything like this kind of extant written testimony for the resurrection of Jesus. At best, this text says one thing on one day and another on the next. There is just no way to come away from it thinking that God was not okay with the ownership of other human beings, with bequeathing them to children as inheritable private property, with mistreatment of them so long as they're not an Israelite slave, and therefore also doing it based on, I would say, maybe race, maybe tribe, whatever term you want to use. Yeah, it really sounds like I'm trying to grift Christianity, or that I'm on the verge of some kind of inevitable conversion. And look, I do understand that like choosing a particular moment and like turning it into a clip can say something in itself. I mean, yeah, sure, okay, you're just saying that Christianity isn't complete and utter nonsense, but like, why do you have to choose that moment to make a clip out of? We're churning out clips all the time, and I'm really happy with the engagement that I'm getting on these videos, but just bear in mind that this is one video in amongst a Niagara of critical material trying to tell you why Christianity is false and why the Bible contradicts itself and why religion doesn't make sense and all that kind of stuff. It's still there. I'm still not a believer in God. I still make pro-atheist content. And also, as far as, pro-Christian content goes, I think this is like about as mild as it could conceivably get. Like, seriously, I'm not even giving like arguments for God's existence in this clip. I'm not like running the cosmological argument or, explaining the arguments for the historicity of the resurrection or something. I'm literally just like reporting an internal state over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
I cannot think of a like milder contribution to this kind of discussion that is not like anti-Christian. I don't think I could have been like softer in the slightly friendly to Christianity direction, and yet it has garnered this kind of response.
Yeah. Again, I think that's what people were picking up on from the critical side, the non-believer side, was that, hey, why is he talking this way with Bear Grylls? And I did not watch the full interview before that because Bear Grylls seems to know about Alex's background, but they're having a friendly conversation. I have Christians that I have these kind of conversations with, and I'll play hypotheticals with, but they know my position. They know what I believe or don't believe, if you will.
It really does make me think that unless I keep making videos exclusively about why religion is completely irrational and has absolutely nothing going for it, and also my position hasn't changed in 10 years of doing this professionally, which, by the way, if that were the case, should probably be reason to distrust me, that unless I steadfastly hold to that position and don't change it and never take religion seriously, Christians will inevitably say that I'm about to become a Christian, and atheists will inevitably say that I'm about to pretend to become a Christian to make a bunch more money. If that is what you think, then fine. There's nothing I can do about that. I do see it as kind of depressing that such a minor, as I see it, comment like this can inspire such a reaction. But all I can say here is that I hope the rest of you can see that I'm just like genuinely interested in this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I also hope that if
you are, dude, Alex, you are. You're talking about Adam and Eve, the Gnostic text. You're really into this stuff, dude. Just like me. That's why we should have a conversation, Alex. This is why I'd like to hang out with you, man. And we got to meet in person someday and do this. Like, I want to have like long conversations with you and go into the weeds about some interesting stuff, because you've learned a lot about New Testament stuff, Bible stuff. I've learned a lot, and together we can have a fascinating dialogue that I think could really enlighten a ton of people to think through these things in ways that most probably don't know about.
If you follow my work at all, like if you've seen some of the videos that I've been putting out recently, it's just immediately obvious to you that I'm not about to become a Christian, and that, yeah, I am taking it more seriously and I'm having more productive conversations across the aisle, as it were, but that, yeah, I retain quite a lot of criticism for that worldview. But I can't prove that. And of course, that is just what I would say if I were trying to grift Christianity, or I suppose secretly on the verge of conversion that I didn't want to make public for some reason. I can't prove that that's not the case. So you'll just have to trust me. Or don't. Whatever.
Look, dude, Alex is awesome. I really, really love Alex. That guy is so freaking funny. What do you think? I definitely agree. I trust Alex here. I do think that, you know, he's being kind. He's having polite conversations. When you watch all the other stuff, it really flies in the face of the grift argument that people are trying to make, that he's just grifting. I think Alex has been Alex. He's been consistent. He's been who he is. And I trust that he's telling the truth. I mean, at the end of the day, I just was pointing out some of the interesting scholarship that I don't think he's really come across that can help support why a Jewish man could be worshipped as a god, and how that doesn't really help the plausibility. So I was just kind of critiquing some of those things that he thinks makes it more plausible, where I don't think it's more plausible. I think the evidence points in the opposite direction. But I'm sure Alex would respect that, and Alex would be like happy to hear, like, oh, really? So I'm curious, because that's who Alex O'Connor is. Brilliant, awesome, open-minded guy, really interested in learning more, and I'm trying to be that way too. That's who I am. I want to know more, I want to learn more, but it's led me in this direction rather than that. But I'm always open. I mean, you got to give me the evidence, right? You've got to give me the evidence. I'm always open. What about you? Make sure you subscribe, check that bell, and hit all. You'll be notified every time we react. Like the video, comment your thoughts and reactions you suggest I react to in the comment section down below. Alex O'Connor, sorry that this is happening to you, but dude, you are getting big, and this is kind of what happens when you have such polarization politically, religiously in the world. It's going to happen, and you know, you want to somehow fit somewhere in the middle of being who you are and be able to talk to whoever you want to talk to, and I understand that, bro. I do. Hit me up, man. Let's do an interview. Let's talk. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, see you then.